Whether it's Hoosier basketball hysteria, racing at the Indianapolis 500,
all behind you here,
or remembering music from Hoosier natives who helped shape a generation. Indiana's footprint is deeply embedded in the fabric of the world. Celebrations are being held across the state, leading up to the big day, December 11th, when Indiana turns 200 years old. Hello, I'm Terra Brantley. All year, Wayne TV has been working with news outlets and organizations across Indiana to give you an in-depth look at the rich history of the Hoosier state. For the next half hour, I invite you to join me as we explore Indiana and the Hoosier heritage we know and continue to cultivate today.
Wayne TV is proud to be celebrating Indiana 200 years young. Now, here's your host, Terra Brantley.
In less than 3 months, Indiana will turn 200 years old. One of the activities leading up to that big day just began a couple of weeks ago. The Bicentennial Torch Relay will go through all 92 counties and wrap up next month. Kicking off the relay, none other than former First Lady Judy OBannon from Indiana's first capital, the town of Corydon, not far from her family farm.
It's just a small patch, but it does have this 1830 log cabin and barn on it and an 1866 log barn. So when I'm here, I really feel the past from the surroundings, and I feel the people and what they had to do to make a living here.
I catch myself saying, isn't that just gorgeous? I think, well, you're not supposed to say that about your own house. But it's just junk that came from place. That's what I think is, it's what people use and rub against when they do what I call their dance of life. I just think it's such a privilege to be in it. When I'm in this is my laughing place, I call it.
There's potential. People always have opportunities. So to take a bunch of old stuff and make it live again is a real thrill for me. I don't think we use our imagination as much as we might. And you got to feel confident. You have to have curiosity. It is lifelong learning, isn't it? To try to see what you could do that wasn't there before and make it better. I love getting in a car with someone, figuring out where I was going, what happened before I got there, who was I going to meet, and then get to see what they were doing to make their place better for the future. I love that. And Hoosiers are a terrific people. They're well-intended, they're solid, they're joyous, and when they do something to their own hometown, they are so elated.
Judy OBannon was selected as the lead torchbearer because in many ways she's the matriarch of our state. She is representative of all of those things that Indiana aspires to be. She loves our communities. She loves them and is invested in them in ways that we all hope to be invested in ourselves. When we created the Indiana Bicentennial Torch Relay, it was created to be a unifying event for the state, to unify neighborhoods, communities, regions, and generations. Judy OBannon is representative of that idea, and so we could think of nobody better than for her to be the person.
It's a big honor, but it probably is very appropriate. Frank OBannon's grandfather was on the Centennial Commission, and when I first came to Corydon as a young bride, I slept under that great big family photo of him with that commission, and I've always had in my house. Looked at that, thought of those people and what they planned. I feel like I'm handing it over from Lou OBannon to someone who's really going to carry it on. I'm old. I'm just a link between the past and the future. I moved in here as a new bride in a little town, and I watched how people responded to events in the world and around them. Nothing much changed here. That's the good, but that's also a troubling part. And that sometimes you need a little scoot, a little inspiration, a little motivation. And the Bicentennial definitely is doing that for Corydon today.
The torch will be in northeast Indiana in just a few days. During the relay, it will travel through 17 state and national parks, one of them the Turkey Run State Park in Marshall. A magazine published by the Department of Natural Resources called Outdoor Indiana takes a look at this park through the lens of one of its photographers.
Sort of like, oh my, spot.
If a day in the office is trekking trails,
Trail 3, it's a fairly spectacular hike.
and terrain, you're John Maxwell.
And they hired me to work in the darkroom, and I started writing stories on the side just to get my pictures used, my photography used, and 28 years later, I'm still doing it.
They are the people at Outdoor Indiana, a magazine published by the Department of Natural Resources. Maxwell is one of the photographers and writers documenting the state park system.
Once you get off the highway, the state's a pretty place. Let's go look at this waterfall up here.
Walking through 100-year-old living history.
But I've been here for like a third of that, which is sort of hard to believe.
Every week, Maxwell explores some of the 400,000 acres of forest, water, and wetlands the state preserves.
We now have a state park within an hour's drive of every Hoosier, and that was our goal to get to at the end of the 100 years. This picture will look different than the last one just because the clouds came over a little bit more.
He is one of the 15 million people to visit the areas every year.
Up towards our 300th nature preserve, many of them you can hike through. State forests, fish and wildlife areas. We have nearly 300 public access sites for fishing and launching boats. And everyone's sort of pretty in its own little way. If he can make it up Trail 3, anybody can.
After 28 years of life through a lens, Maxwell says every frame is a first.
Well, there's always something new to find. There's always different people there. Right now it's pretty slack. It's not the greatest way to make a living, but it's a good way to live a life.
Coming up, more from Indiana's great outdoors. We'll journey along what's left of the Wabash and Erie Canal.
Now, here's more celebrating Indiana 200 years young with your host, Terra Brantley.
Waterways played a vital role in Indiana's history, especially the Wabash and Erie Canal, which helped put the Wabash Valley on the map. Kevin Orpert and photojournalist Gary Bryan from WTHI News 10 in Terre Haute wanted to find out what happened to the canal. Here's a look at what they uncovered.
One of the earliest influences on the economic development of the state of Indiana was the Wabash and Erie Canal. At a length of nearly 460 miles, the canal was dug by hand by Irish immigrants at a wage of 60 cents a day, plus 2 jiggers of whiskey, 80 cents a day if you fed yourself, and extra whiskey if you worked on Sunday. And it came right through the Wabash Valley and Terre Haute. Local historian Mary Lee Hagan tells us,
well, the Wabash and Erie Canal arrived in Terre Haute in 1849. And at that time, it was welcomed with open arms because it was going to be not only a pathway for passengers to come to this area, but it also was going to have an economic effect on the area because goods that were produced here could be moved on, and so it opened up a whole different world for those people that lived in the area.
There was one Terre Haute industry, however, that benefited greatly from the canal.
Well, interestingly, one of the biggest impacts on our city were the beer manufacturing district that the Germans had established over by what is now Mager's restaurant. Blemo area it was called at one time. Stables restaurant is in that area. And they loaded beer onto flatboats on the canal and transported it then south. So it was a real economic boom to the beer industry in the city. They put barrels of beer onto those flatboats and took it down the river and sold, the canal, and sold it.
While Terre Haute and the Wabash Valley got a big financial boost from the canal, it didn't last long.
By 1860, the canal was gone. The reason it was not gone physically, but its impact on the community and in the area was gone because the railroads had arrived on the scene, and they were a much faster and cheaper way to transport the goods that were manufactured or grown in this area. So it was a very short span of time that it was economically beneficial to Terre Haute and Vigo County.
In fact, by 1854, canal boats were already hauling rails for the new iron horses.
I have this very old book which shows the path of the canal through Indiana. And after the canal leaves Terre Haute, it heads to the southeast. Well, there's a big drop in water level between Terre Haute and Evansville where there are locks. The question is, are any locks still standing? Well, let's go see if we can explore and find one. To me, this is clearly visible. See how this is dug out here and kind of barren? And then we look down here and there's still water standing. And this might very well be the path of the old canal, which means that we could be getting close to the lock. Let's go a little farther and see what we can find. We're standing on the old canal bed here. Whoa! I'll be darned.
Oh, look at that.
Lock number 47, a stone lock. I'm certain this is it. The state of Indiana was only 22 years old when this lock was built. And I want to point out that there's no mortar on these stones. And that's because the water would have caused the mortar to erode. It was built by a fellow named Robert Logan. And if you look down this way, you can see how long it goes. Water would fill up into this lock, and then the boat would sit there until the water either dropped or was raised, and then the boat would proceed. What's amazing to me is that water still stands in the bed of this old canal right here in the middle of the lock. But also what's interesting is that the west side of the lock is completely, well, almost complete here, stands very tall, but over here on the east side, the stones only go up so far. So the mystery would be, what happened to the rest of the stones of this lock? This was once known as the finest lock along the Wabash and Erie Canal, and it's a miracle that this lock still stands right here, just southeast of Terre Haute, Indiana. Not a lot of people know it's here, but this is truly a monument to history and also part of Indiana's bicentennial. With Gary the photographer, I'm Kevin Orpert.
If you want to learn more about the Wabash and Erie Canal and you don't want to take a road trip, you can come here to the Fort Wayne History Center, or you can go to the Allen County Public Library. When we come back, a Hoosier woman who left a nationwide mark on reforms that is still in place today.
Celebrating Indiana 200 years young continues.
A woman who is responsible for many of the housing requirements that we expect and even take for granted today is from right here in Indiana. As an author, educator, and advocate, Albion Fellows Bacon made a name for herself in organizations and civic groups across the nation. As Shelby Coates from WEVV explains, this educated housewife left her life of luxury to lead reforms that all began in Evansville, Indiana.
When people wanted to do different kinds of reform, she was the person you went to get to be a speaker.
In the early 1900s, the name Albion Fellows Bacon would ring from the River City to the State House in Indianapolis to the White House in Washington, D.C.
She was a smaller woman there, but she had kind of this, she was polite about it, but she had this kind of bulldog, tenacious attitude there when she got involved in something.
In 1865, Albion Fellows Bacon was born in Evansville into a position of privilege, according to Vanderburgh County historian Stan Schmidt. She grew up well educated in this home just east of downtown that still stands today. And while bringing flowers to the poor and serving at Trinity Methodist Church, she learned of the horrible housing conditions for many working class families.
Housing's totally inadequate. A lot of what people at the time called pigsties. There are shacks there. And there were no rules at the time.
The lack of regulations prompted Bacon to advocate for statewide standards. After spending 8 years at the state capitol, her vision would become law in 1909 with the passing of an Indiana housing law.
It's the foundation she laid for things that now are fairly common, fairly acceptable. You know, they're what people expect you know, in life, in government.
Her work in housing reform would lead to other social pushes: work conditions for women, mental health care for children, and jail work release programs. She would serve on White House committees under the Wilson and Hoover administrations. In Evansville, she would help establish the YWCA and create and lead the Evansville Plan Commission.
We can all be proud of her activism back at a time when women weren't very active.
State Senator Vanita Becker helped establish the Albion Fellows Bacon Center in Evansville, a safe place for victims of violence and sexual abuse.
It provides a safe place for women and their children when they are in need, so I think it fits very well into her original mission and scope.
And while Bacon's efforts shined a spotlight on the Hoosier state during the Progressive era, her name is still proclaimed today, from the Albion Fellows Bacon Center to the Bacon apartment building still in downtown Evansville. In Evansville, Shelby Coates, 44 News.
A group that helps empower children is going to perform at Indiana's Bicentennial Celebration concert coming up. Fort Wayne's Voices of Unity Choir.
Now here's more celebrating Indiana 200 years young with your host, Terra Brantley.
A world-class Fort Wayne choir is going to help Hoosiers celebrate Indiana's bicentennial. On December 11th, the Voices of Unity will perform in Indianapolis. The show will come on the heels of the choir's Journey to the Vatican European Tour. Here's a look at part of that journey and why the choir was chosen for the bicentennial celebration.
It's a very holy and sacred place.
And in this holy and sacred place, Fort Wayne's Voices of Unity gathered to sing.
I was actually very nervous for going to sing at the Vatican.
Lauren Jones, among those lifting their voices in collective praise during afternoon mass at St. Peter's Basilica at the Vatican. Unity's Journey to the Vatican 2016 European Tour has been honored as an Indiana Bicentennial Legacy Project. Now on the heels of that tour, the choir is getting ready for an inspirational bicentennial celebration at the Indiana Farmers Coliseum, Sunday, December 11th, Indiana's 200th birthday.
We're performing on the stage of their event.
Unity will be among various groups encouraging Hoosiers to celebrate Indiana and ignite the future, with a special emphasis on children.
We were recommended to be a project or an organization that best represents Indiana's excellence, and so they are acknowledging us as one of Indiana's great historical icons. That's really incredible to see the Voices of Unity be given that type of recognition for the state.
16 years. That's how long Voices of Unity has been working to positively impact children through music. What started out as a choir has evolved to become much more than a singing group.
There's a giant world out there, and I love that we get to explore it.
Longtime member David Alvarez was with Unity at the 2010 World Choir Games in China when it was crowned Gospel Grand Champions. In fact, he held the American flag.
How many 13-year-olds get to say they went to China, you know? So it's just a bunch of different experiences that I didn't expect to have, and I'm just so grateful for.
Experiences like 2 more gold-winning World Choir Games in 2012 and 2014 in Cincinnati, Ohio and Riga, Latvia, performing at Carnegie Hall, and Indy's Lucas Oil Stadium for the NFL kickoff celebration.
I have been a part of the choir for 8.5, almost 9 years.
Brooke Person and her family frequently travel from Chicago to Fort Wayne so she can participate.
It's impacted my life a lot. Life in Chicago, learning to stay off of the streets, staying positive.
I'm an educator, so I work with kids all the time, and I see them on the other end, or I see those that don't have someone to do that for them, to you know, believe in them and to encourage them. So I love that about VOU.
The choir holds youth empowerment programs and rehearsals at its home base, the Reinhardt Center at IPFW in Fort Wayne. There are approximately 70 singers ages 7 to 19 and a few adult mentors.
And it kind of sets the bar, high for them in life, and that way they're able to apply all these life skills that they're learning about being on time, being ready, being focused.
All members are required to memorize the choir's mission and focus statements in both English and Spanish. And this year, because of their European tour, they also had to learn the statements in Italian. To translate, the entire mission statement reads, "Unite and empower our members with artistic excellence by promoting training, discipline, professionalism, and teamwork in a positive environment that allows every person the opportunity to grow and express their natural artistic abilities as they follow and fulfill their dreams." During Indiana's bicentennial show, the choir hopes to embody a dream fulfilled as its members continue to inspire youngsters to develop life skills that lead to opportunities of a lifetime, like their moment at the Vatican.
To be able to sing soulful music within the Vatican is something that me personally, I feel honored to be a part of history.
As part of Wayne TV's ongoing commitment to you, we'll continue celebrating Indiana's bicentennial with special programs leading up to the big day, December 11th, when Indiana turns 200 years old. Thanks for joining us for Celebrating Indiana 200 Years Young. I'm Terra Brantley.